Could I have the next questioner from this side?
I have a question for Dr. Craig. First of all, let me thank you for your wonderful exposition. I thought it was very well argued. I myself am a Jew, and I have no problem with mystery. I do have a great deal of problem with biblical literalism, like this young lady who calls the Bible the Word of God. This, to me as a Jew, is idolatry, because only God is God, not a book. We are surrounded by biblical literalists. Obviously, Dr. Craig, you are not one, because you don't take everything. You believe certain things are legendary. Probably I would imagine, the myth of the creation of the world in 6 days, I would imagine you think is a myth, as I do. However, my question is this. As you realize, the Gospel of Mark, according to most New Testament scholars, is the only one that was actually written before the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. The oldest editions of the Gospel of Mark do not include descriptions of the post-resurrection appearances of Jesus, but end with the women coming to the empty tomb. They see it, and a young man is there, not an angel. A young man is there who tells them, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He goes before you into Galilee. Go therefore, telling the disciples that he is risen." Something like that, I believe. And the gospel ends that they run away and they say nothing to anyone. The end. Then there are later additions that come along. I want to also point out that there are, along with this mystery of the empty tomb, we also have a very mysterious thing in the post-resurrection appearances described by Matthew, John, and Mark, the writers of those Gospels. John, they all share this in common. The people do not recognize Jesus. Mary Magdalene, according to the Gospel of John, in the garden, mistakes Jesus for the gardener and talks to him at quite length before she realizes that it is Jesus himself. The disciples who walk with Jesus on the road to Emmaus the day or two after the supposed resurrection, they also do not recognize Jesus, but think of him as a stranger on the road. They do not recognize him all day.
Did you sum up your question?
Yes, please. May I proceed?
Yes, please sum up.
There are 3 resurrection stories that I wanted to ask you about. The second, they also do not recognize him until they invite him to dinner several hours later. He breaks the bread, and then they recognize him as Jesus, and he disappears magically. The third one I want to talk about, I'm not sure if it's Matthew or Luke, but the disciples are fishing. And again, they see a mysterious stranger upon the shore whom they do not recognize. And then only when he says, "Dip your nets into the water and come up with a full load of fish," do they recognize him as Jesus. How do you understand these mysterious misrecognitions of Jesus if he's truly physically and bodily resurrected? Are you sure they're not just strangers that they perhaps imagine to be the resurrected Lord? Or perhaps even that every man is Jesus, is Christ, is the incarnation of God, perhaps?
Yeah. With respect to Mark 16, scholars dispute whether or not the original gospel actually ended at verse 8 or not, or whether there might be a lost ending that would include resurrection appearances as well. But clearly, in any case, Mark has foreshadowed resurrection appearances in Galilee. He has the angel say to the women, "Tell Peter and his disciples, he is going before you to Galilee. There you will see him as he told you." So even if Mark doesn't choose to narrate the appearances in Galilee, he knows of them, and he foreshadows them in his gospel. Now, this non-recognition motif that you mentioned is very mysterious. I agree with you. I've often wondered what is going on here. We shouldn't exaggerate the extent of this. As you say, it only appears in 3 of the resurrection stories, this non-recognition motif. And I don't think that the most plausible explanation is to say, oh, well, it was just strangers or something like that, because what that does is takes the stories to be literally historically credible enough to believe in the non-recognition motif, but then doesn't take it credible enough to believe in the other supernatural aspects of the narrative. And you can't play this kind of arbitrary pick and choose with the narratives. So I think what's going on there is some kind of a theological point that the evangelists are trying to make. And my suggestion, though I'm not sure about this, could be this, is that it's a way of saying to the disciples that Jesus is not continuing with them in the same mode of existence in the same manner that they once knew him when he walked with them in Galilee. That now, as the risen and glorified Lord, they will relate to Jesus in a new way that isn't going to be that similar, familiar, earthly sort of encounter that they used to have with him, and that this non-recognition motif and the disclosure of Jesus, for example, in the breaking of the bread in Emmaus or in the miraculous catch of fish on the Sea of Tiberias, is a way of saying that Jesus in his risen and exalted mode of existence will relate to the disciples in a new way. That's the best I can do with that.
Do you believe in evolution?
We need to go to the next questioner, please. Who has the next question for Dr. Avalos? You've already had a lengthy question, sir. We're ready for the next questioner. Is there another questioner for Dr. Avalos on this side?
Yes. Dr. Avalos, you based your whole argument, or most of it, the vast majority on it, on discrediting Dr. Craig instead of discrediting the resurrection of Jesus, which is what we all came here to hear you do. So I think in order to redeem yourself, could you just give a few explanations, alternative explanations to the resurrection of Jesus and why they're better than Dr. Craig's? And you really don't have to mention Dr. Craig to do that.
Please be quiet so Dr. Avalos can answer the question.
If you phrase that question respectfully, I will answer it.
Okay, do we have the next question from this side?
Yeah, mine's for Dr. Craig. I found it kind of interesting that you didn't attempt to refute Dr. Avalos' point that we didn't have any documents, any real documents prior to the 3rd century concerning the resurrection. So my question to you is, do we have any actual documents that could have been written by anyone who knew Jesus?
Well, we have copies of those documents, but no, we don't have the original autographs. But please, I want to say to you, in all sincerity, this isn't where the debate lies. I did respond to that point. Textual critics have thousands of Greek manuscripts, and they come in different families, so that they're not all just copied from the same original. They, in the sense that there is an Alexandrian text, a Byzantine text, a Caesarean text, a Western text. And by comparing these with each other, textual scholars are able to reconstruct the text of the New Testament with over 99% accuracy. So please, if you want to, argue about the resurrection and so forth, that's fine. But let's keep the argument where the real dispute is. The text of the New Testament isn't in serious dispute today, even by the most skeptical critics. Otherwise, you would have to explain to me, where are the textual variants for the resurrection narratives? Apart from the lost ending of Mark, what are you talking about here in terms of textual corruption? The text of the New Testament is substantially the same as it was originally written, and so you don't need to worry about the fact that this may have been corrupted over the centuries. The manuscripts that we have are so early and so many that the text can be reconstructed with 99% confidence of what the original autographs, the original documents really said.
So you don't dispute the dates at all? Right.
We need to go to the next questioner.